Undercover owner finds his employee with baby living in a car. What happened next will restore your faith in humanity. A Hollywood legend sits in a rented Honda Civic at 5:30 in the morning, watching the parking lot of his own company. His famous long hair is hidden beneath a worn baseball cap. His warm brown eyes are concealed behind thick, framed glasses. Nobody knows he owns this entire 3,000-employee corporation. His breath fogs in the cold October air as he witnesses something that stops his heart. A silver sedan parked in the far corner, windows covered with condensation. Inside, a young woman cradles an infant, preparing for another day of work. She is his employee. She is living in her car, and he had no idea. His name is Keanu Reeves. And what he discovers next will change everything he thought he knew about his own company. The executive conference room on the 30th floor of Anderson Technologies headquarters offered a commanding view of the Los Angeles skyline. Floor to ceiling windows framed the sprawling city below, where millions of people rushed through their daily routines, chasing dreams, struggling to survive, hoping for something better. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished conference table, where 7 executives sat in leather chairs that cost more than most of their entry-level employees made in a month. At the head of the table sat Keanu Reeves. He looked different from how the world knew him. Gone were the casual jeans and motorcycle jacket that photographers loved to capture. Today he wore a simple charcoal suit, no tie, the collar of his white shirt open. His long dark brown hair, now streaked with distinguished gray at the temples, fell past his shoulders. His warm brown eyes held an expression of deep contemplation as he studied the quarterly report in front of him. Victoria Palmer, the chief executive officer, clicked to the next slide on the presentation screen. Her platinum blonde hair was cut in a severe bob that framed her angular face. Her designer gray suit was impeccable, her cold gray eyes scanning the room with the precision of someone who viewed every interaction as a transaction. Employee satisfaction scores remained stable across all divisions. Victoria announced, her voice carrying the practiced confidence of someone who had given hundreds of such presentations. The East Los Angeles Customer Service Center shows acceptable retention rates. I recommend maintaining current operational protocols. Keanu's gaze drifted from the spreadsheet to a photograph on the wall behind Victoria. Robert, Bobby, Anderson, the founder of Anderson Technologies, the man who had believed in Keanu when no one else would. Keanu remembered that night in 2013 like it was yesterday. His career had hit rock bottom after 47 Ronin failed catastrophically at the box office. He had wandered into a bar in Santa Monica, nursing whiskey and self-doubt, when a young engineer with wild hair and wilder dreams had sat down beside him. Bobby had talked for 3 hours about his vision for a technology company that would revolutionize visual effects while treating every employee like family. He needed $20 million to make it real. Every venture capitalist in Silicon Valley had rejected him. "I see something in you," Bobby had said to Keanu that night. "You understand what it means to be underestimated. You know what it feels like when the world writes you off." Keanu had written the check the next morning. $20 million. Everything he had saved. Bobby had built Anderson Technologies from nothing into a 3,000-employee empire. And when cancer took him in 2018, he had left everything to Keanu with a single request. "Promise me," Bobby had whispered from his hospital bed, his hand gripping Keanu's with surprising strength. "Promise me you will never let this company become a place where people are just numbers on a spreadsheet. Every employee is someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's parent. Remember that." "I promise, Bobby." And now, 6 years later, Keanu stared at his friend's photograph and wondered if he had kept that promise. "The East LA Center," Keanu said quietly, interrupting Victoria's presentation. "What do you know about the actual working conditions there?" Victoria's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. The metrics indicate acceptable performance levels. Turnover is within industry standards. I did not ask about metrics. I asked about working conditions. The room fell silent. The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I am sure our regional management handles day-to-day operations effectively, Victoria replied, her voice slightly cooler. There is no need for executive intervention in routine matters. Keanu stood up, walking to the window. Below, the city stretched endlessly, millions of lives unfolding in ways he would never see from this height. I want to visit the East LA Center, he said. Of course. I can arrange a formal inspection tour for next quarter. No. Keanu turned to face her. I want to work there. As an employee, without anyone knowing who I am. Victoria's carefully composed expression cracked for just a moment. That is highly irregular. The liability concerns alone would require extensive legal review. Bobby used to do it every year. He called it staying connected to the heartbeat of the company. Keanu picked up the quarterly report and set it back on the table. When was the last time anyone in this room talked to an entry-level employee? Actually talked to them, not evaluated them. No one answered. Margaret? Keanu said, addressing his personal assistant who sat quietly in the corner taking notes. Prepare employment documents for John Anderson, age 55. Recent layoff victim looking for any available work. Margaret Collins nodded, her silver, streaked brown hair catching the morning light. After 12 years as his assistant, nothing surprised her anymore. How long? Victoria asked, clearly unhappy but unwilling to openly challenge the company chairman. 2 weeks. Maybe longer. Keanu headed for the door. And Victoria, I want complete access to the Employee Assistance Program records when I return. Every application, every approval, every rejection. He did not wait for her response. Victoria Palmer watched Keanu leave, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the conference table with barely contained frustration. The moment the door closed, she turned to her assistant, a nervous young man named Bradley who documented everything she said with religious devotion. Clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks, she said quietly, and get me everything we have on the East LA Center. Employee files, complaint records, assistance applications. Everything. Bradley nodded, already typing on his tablet. Victoria had worked too hard to build her position at Anderson Technologies to let some celebrity chairman with a bleeding heart disrupt her carefully constructed empire. The cost? Cutting measures she had implemented over the past 3 years had saved the company millions. If some employees had to struggle a little harder as a result, that was simply the price of efficiency. But if Keanu Reeves was going undercover, she needed to know exactly what he might find. And more importantly, she needed to make sure certain things stayed hidden. 3 days later, Keanu parked his rented Honda Civic in the far corner of the Anderson Technologies, East LA Customer Service Center parking lot. The sun had not yet risen. The October air bit through his faded black hoodie as he stepped out of the car. The transformation was remarkable. His long, dark brown hair was tucked entirely beneath a worn gray baseball cap. A fuller, unkempt beard covered his familiar jawline. Thick, framed black glasses sat on his nose, subtly changing the shape of his face. Worn blue jeans with holes at the knees, old sneakers with separating soles, and the kind of exhausted posture that comes from life beating you down completed the disguise. He looked like exactly what his fake resume said he was, a 55-year-old man who had lost everything and needed any job he could find. The building itself showed the wear of its 15 years. Paint peeling near the roofline. Cracks in the parking lot asphalt. Fluorescent lights flickering through grimy windows. It looked nothing like the gleaming headquarters downtown. Keanu had arrived early, around 5:30, to maintain his cover as an eager new hire desperate to make a good impression. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few cars belonging to the overnight cleaning crew. Movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention. In the far corner of the lot, Partially hidden behind a large recycling dumpster was a silver Honda Civic with slightly foggy windows. Keanu might have walked past it without a second thought, but a sound stopped him in his tracks. The soft cry of an infant. He froze, watching as a figure in the driver's seat stirred. The interior light flickered on, and through the condensation-covered windows, he could make out a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, gently rocking a baby against her shoulder. His first instinct was to approach, to help, but something made him hold back. He watched from the shadows as the woman moved with practiced efficiency. She changed the baby's diaper in the cramped space. She heated a bottle using a portable warmer plugged into the cigarette lighter. She transformed the back seat into a makeshift nursery with the kind of routine that suggested this was not a one-time emergency. This was her life. The baby's cries subsided, and the woman emerged from the car. She carried a diaper bag over one shoulder, a professional-looking briefcase in her other hand, and the now peaceful infant in a car seat. Her clothes were modest but clean. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. Even from this distance, Keanu could see the dark circles under her tired green eyes. She walked briskly toward the building's side entrance. Keanu recognized her from the employee database he had studied before starting his undercover assignment. Megan Collins, 26 years old, customer service representative, 8 months with the company, living in her car with her baby, in his parking lot. Following at a discreet distance, Keanu watched as Megan entered a side door and headed for the company daycare center. It was one of the benefits Bobby had insisted on implementing, subsidized childcare for employees with young children. Through the window, Keanu observed as Megan handed her daughter to an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. The daycare worker, whose name tag read Dorothy Bennett, accepted the sleeping infant with obvious affection, as if this were a grandchild rather than just another baby to watch. Megan kissed her daughter's forehead, lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. Then she squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked toward the main building. In the employee restroom, Keanu positioned himself near the entrance, pretending to study the posted safety regulations. Through the slightly ajar door, he could hear Megan's morning transformation. Running water, the sound of makeup being applied, hair being adjusted, the rustle of clothing being straightened and smoothed. When she emerged, no one would have guessed she had spent the night sleeping in her car. She looked professional, composed, ready to face whatever the day would bring. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. This woman was fighting a battle no one could see, and she was winning it, day after day, with nothing but her own determination. Over the next few days, Keanu, under his alias of John Anderson, managed to secure a desk near Megan's workstation. The training supervisor, a harried man named Greg who seemed perpetually overwhelmed, had simply pointed to an empty chair and told him to shadow whoever was available. Megan had been the only one who did not sigh with annoyance when the new hire appeared at her elbow. "First day?" she asked, offering a small but genuine smile. "Do not worry. It gets easier. I am Megan, John." Keanu shook her hand, noting the calluses on her palm, the slightly rough skin of someone who worked harder than their job required. "Thank you for being patient with me. I know I am probably slower than you are used to. We all start somewhere." Megan turned back to her screen as a call came in. "Watch and learn. That is the best advice I can give." What Keanu observed over the following days astounded him. Megan was consistently the first employee to arrive and among the last to leave. Her customer satisfaction scores were not just good, they were extraordinary, 40% above the department average. She resolved 95% of escalated complaints on the first attempt, a rate that seemed almost impossible given the complexity of the technical issues customers called about. But what struck him most was not her performance metrics. It was her attitude. Where other employees grumbled about difficult customers or outdated equipment, Megan maintained an unwavering positivity. She spent her lunch breaks not eating, but studying company training materials and helping other new hires navigate the complex customer service software. When a particularly aggressive customer reduced a young coworker to tears, it was Megan who stepped in, somehow managing to turn the situation around while maintaining her professional composure. "How do you do it?" Keanu asked her one afternoon, genuinely curious. That customer was screaming about something that was not even our fault. Megan shrugged, her tired eyes softening slightly. "Everyone is fighting a battle we cannot see. That man was probably having the worst day of his life, and we happen to be the only people he could yell at. If I can make his day even a little bit better, then maybe he will go home and be kinder to his family." That is a remarkably generous perspective. I have had people be kind to me when I did not deserve it. She glanced toward the window, toward the parking lot where her car sat waiting for another night. Kindness costs nothing, but it can mean everything to someone who is drowning. But Keanu also observed something far less inspiring. The floor supervisor, a woman named Rachel Morrison, seemed to take particular pleasure in making Megan's life difficult. Rachel was in her early 40s, with dyed red hair and a permanent sneer that suggested she viewed kindness as weakness. "Collins!" Rachel's voice cut through the office like a blade. "Your bathroom break exceeded 4 minutes. That is coming out of your productivity score." Megan nodded without protest. "Yes, Mom, it will not happen again." "See that it does not. Some of us are trying to run a professional operation here." Keanu watched the exchange with growing anger. He had noticed that Rachel never seemed to enforce the same strict standards on other employees. Only Megan. Only the woman who worked harder than anyone else in the department. Later that day, he overheard Rachel talking to another supervisor in the break room. "The Collins girl thinks she is so special," Rachel sneered. "Always staying late, always volunteering for extra shifts. She is making the rest of us look bad. I heard she applied for assistance 3 times. The other supervisor said something about childcare costs. Denied every time." Rachel laughed. Victoria Palmer herself flagged her file. Said we cannot be handing out money to every sob story that walks through the door. Keanu's blood ran cold. Victoria Palmer had personally denied Megan's assistance requests. He needed to know more. One evening, as they were both working late, Keanu purposely steered the conversation toward career goals. Megan's eyes lit up in a way he had not seen before. "I want to transfer to the technical support division," she admitted, her fingers nervously twisting a pen. "I have been teaching myself coding at the public library during my days off. They have free Wi-Fi, and there are these amazing online courses." "That sounds ambitious." "I know it is a long shot." She laughed softly, self-deprecatingly. "Single mom, no college degree. Most places would not even look at my resume twice. But Anderson Technologies gave me a chance when nobody else would. They looked at my potential, not my circumstances." She paused, her voice dropping slightly. "That means something. You know?" Kanu felt a knot form in his stomach. Here was someone who embodied exactly the kind of loyalty and initiative that Bobby had always talked about. Someone who believed in the company's values even when the company itself seemed to have forgotten them. And she was sleeping in her car. In his parking lot. That night, instead of driving to his temporary apartment, Keanu parked his rental car across from Megan's Honda Civic. He watched as she went through her evening routine with practiced efficiency. She collected Grace from the daycare center, changed the baby's diaper in the back seat, set up a small battery, powered fan for ventilation, carefully positioned sun shades over the windows for privacy. The temperature gauge on his dashboard showed 46 degrees. Winter was coming. How much longer could she survive like this? Memories crashed over him like waves. Jennifer. Beautiful, vibrant Jennifer Syme. The love of his life. They had been so happy, so full of plans. A baby on the way. a future stretching out before them like an endless highway. Ava Archer Syme Reeves, born sleeping on Christmas Eve, 1999. Their daughter who never got to take her first breath. The devastation had destroyed them both. Jennifer had spiraled into depression, into pain that nothing could touch. And then, just 2 years later, she was gone too. Car accident. Probably an accident. Keanu would never know for certain, and the uncertainty haunted him still. For years afterward, he had drifted through life like a ghost, going through the motions of existence without really living, finding solace only in the characters he played, the alternate lives he could inhabit for a few hours at a time. Bobby had changed that. Bobby had given him something to believe in again, a purpose beyond himself. "Promise me," Bobby had said. "Promise me you will never let this company become a place where people are just numbers." Keanu stared at Megan's car, at the small shape of Grace visible through the fogged window, and felt tears burn in his eyes. He had failed. Somehow, despite his best intentions, he had failed. His company had an employee sleeping in a car with her infant daughter, and no one in leadership had noticed. Or worse, no one had cared. At 2 in the morning, Keanu called Margaret. "I need everything you can find on Megan Collins," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Employment history, background, assistance applications, everything. And I need to know why Victoria Palmer personally flagged her file." "Is everything all right?" Margaret's voice was concerned. She had been with him long enough to recognize when something was wrong. "No." Keanu watched as Megan shifted in the front seat, adjusting her position to stay warm. "Nothing is all right, but I am going to fix it." The report arrived on his phone the next afternoon, and what it contained made Keanu's hands shake with barely contained fury. Megan Elizabeth Collins, 26 years old, born in Columbus, Ohio, moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago chasing dreams that had dissolved like morning fog. Her mother had died of cancer 2 years earlier. Her father had abandoned the family when Megan was 10, vanishing without a forwarding address or a single birthday card in the years that followed. She had no siblings, no extended family willing to help, no safety net of any kind. The father of Grace, a man named Tyler whose last name was not listed, had walked out the moment Megan told him she was pregnant. She had heard he moved to Seattle, started a new life, erased her and their daughter from his story, as if they had never existed. Megan had been evicted from her apartment 4 months ago. The landlord had raised the rent beyond what she could afford. She had been living in her car ever since. Her hourly wage was $18, working 40 hours a week. That translated to roughly $33,000 annually before taxes. After taxes, she took home approximately $2,200 per month. Her expenses, as near as Margaret could determine, included car payments and insurance at $350, phone at $80, diapers and formula at $400, and gas at $150. That left barely $1,200 for everything else. Food for herself was a luxury she could rarely afford. Her current bank balance, as of that morning, was $67.43. But the detail that made Keanu's blood boil was in the final section of the report. Megan had contacted the company's employee assistance program 4 times in the past 6 months. Not twice, as he had initially thought. 4 times. The first 2 applications had been denied because her income exceeded the eligibility threshold for emergency housing assistance. The third application had been flagged by Victoria Palmer personally with a note that read, "Chronic applicant. Recommend denial. We cannot encourage dependency." The fourth application had never even been processed. It sat in a queue marked low priority for 3 months before being automatically archived. A woman living in her car with an infant had been labeled a chronic applicant and ignored. There was more. Margaret had discovered that Rachel Morrison, Megan's hostel supervisor, was Victoria Palmer's cousin. Rachel had been hired 3 years ago despite having no relevant experience. and she had been steadily promoted ever since. The pieces were coming together, and the picture they formed was ugly. Victoria Palmer had built a system designed to extract maximum productivity while minimizing investment in the people who actually did the work. She had installed her own family members in key positions. She had created policies that punished employees for seeking help, and Megan Collins had been caught in the gears of that machine. Keanu closed the report and stared at the wall of his temporary apartment for a long time. He had two options. He could reveal himself now, fire Victoria immediately, and personally ensure Megan received the help she needed. Or he could wait, gather more evidence, and make sure that when he finally acted, the corruption would be exposed so completely that no one could ever rebuild it. The first option was faster. The second was more thorough. He picked up his phone and called Amanda Sterling, his executive assistant of 8 years. "I need you to do something for me," he said. "Something that requires absolute discretion." "Of course." Amanda's voice was steady, unflappable. "What do you need?" Keanu explained his plan. When he finished, there was a long pause. "You want me to offer her a fake job to test her loyalty?" Amanda asked carefully. "I need to know if her dedication to the company is genuine or just survival instinct. If she truly believes in what we are supposed to stand for, or if she would betray us the moment a better offer came along. And if she passes this test." Keanu looked at the photograph of Bobby Anderson that he kept in his wallet, next to the picture of Jennifer and the ultrasound image of Ava that he had carried for 25 years. "Then I am going to make sure she never has to sleep in a parking lot again, and I am going to make sure everyone responsible for her suffering pays the price." 3 days later, a sleek black Tesla pulled into the Anderson Technologies parking lot during the lunch hour. Amanda Sterling emerged wearing the kind of power suit that screamed success and authority. Her auburn hair was styled perfectly. Her blue eyes carried the sharp intelligence of someone who had built a career on reading people accurately. According to the cover story, she was a senior recruiter from Nexus Technologies, Anderson's primary competitor in the visual effects industry. Megan was returning from the daycare center, where she had spent her lunch break feeding Grace, when Amanda intercepted her near the break room. "Megan Collins." Amanda's voice carried the precise mix of warmth and professional authority. "Do you have a moment? I have a proposition that might interest you." The small conference room felt intimate and intimidating at the same time. Amanda did not waste time on small talk. She placed a leather portfolio on the table and began laying out documents with practiced precision. "Nexus Technologies has been monitoring your customer service metrics for some time," she explained, her manicured fingers sliding a glossy folder across the table. "Your handling of difficult customers, your consistent performance ratings, your ability to de-escalate tensions. These are rare qualities in customer service representatives." Megan's hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder. Inside was an employment contract that made her eyes widen. $85,000 annual salary. More than double what she currently made. Comprehensive health benefits that would cover all of Grace's pediatric needs. And most incredibly, a housing assistance program that included 3 months of paid rent up front in a corporate apartment complex. "There must be some mistake," Megan whispered, staring at the numbers that could transform her life. "I do not have a degree. My experience is not that extensive. We value talent over paper credentials." Amanda interjected smoothly. She pulled out another document, a performance analysis. "Your customer satisfaction scores are 40% above the industry average. You have resolved 95% of escalated complaints successfully on the first attempt. These numbers speak louder than any diploma." Megan's mind raced with possibilities. With this money, she could afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Grace could have her own room with real walls and a ceiling, not the cramped back seat of their Honda. She could buy proper baby furniture, proper food, Proper? Everything? Then Amanda delivered the final detail. There is one condition, she said, leaning forward, her expression growing serious. We'll need someone who can start immediately. If you accept, you would need to resign from Anderson Technologies today and begin with us tomorrow morning. Megan's heart pounded. Tomorrow. But that is so sudden. I have not given any notice. It is a sensitive position. Amanda's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. We are launching a new customer service platform and need someone with fresh insight from our competitors' systems. The position will not be available if you wait. She paused meaningfully. Of course, this conversation never happened. Corporate espionage laws being what they are. The implication hung heavy in the air. This was not just a job offer. This was an invitation to share insider knowledge about Anderson Technologies systems. The money would solve all of Megan's immediate problems, but the ethical implications made her stomach churn. From his hidden position in the adjacent room, watching through one-way glass, Keanu held his breath. This was the moment of truth. Would Megan's loyalty hold against the promise of immediate salvation? Megan stared at the contract, her fingers tracing the salary figure that could lift her and Grace out of their car and into a real home. $85,000. A signing bonus of $10,000, enough to buy a reliable used car. 3 months of paid rent, enough time to get back on her feet, to stop surviving and start living. But something felt wrong. The secrecy. The pressure for an immediate decision. The subtle suggestion about sharing company information. It reminded her of Tyler. Grace's father had made grand promises, too. He had painted beautiful pictures of their future together. Right up until the moment, he decided that future was too much work and disappeared. The daycare here, Megan said suddenly, thinking of Mrs. Dorothy Bennett, who always had an extra smile for Grace. Would your facility accept infants under 12 months? Amanda's perfectly maintained smile flickered for just a moment. This was not a question she had been prepared for. We have excellent childcare partners we can recommend. Megan nodded slowly, but her expression had changed. She thought about Dorothy at the daycare, who sometimes slipped her extra diapers, claiming they were about to expire anyway. She thought about her supervisor, who never questioned why she needed so many extra shifts. She thought about Tommy Richardson, the young guy in the next cubicle who always saved her a fresh cup of coffee in the morning. She thought about John, the new hire with the kind eyes behind those thick glasses, who always asked if she was okay, even when she insisted she was fine. Anderson Technologies had given her a chance when no one else would. They had looked at her potential, not her circumstances. They had seen a human being, not just a resume full of deficiencies. The company was far from perfect. The assistance programs had failed her. The systems were bureaucratic and cold. Rachel Morrison made her life difficult at every turn. But the people, the ones who worked beside her every day, they were family. Megan gathered the papers and handed them back to Amanda. "Thank you for thinking of me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "But I will have to decline." Amanda's eyes widened slightly. "Perhaps you need time to think it over. This is a significant opportunity." "No." Megan stood up, squaring her shoulders. "I appreciate the offer, but I will not leave Anderson Technologies this way. They took a chance on me when I needed it most. Even if I am just a number to the executives upstairs, they are more than just a paycheck to me." She paused at the door, looking back at Amanda. "I should get back to work. My break ended 5 minutes ago, and I have customers waiting." Then she walked out, her head held high despite everything. In the observation room, Keanu exhaled slowly. He had watched many performances in his life, given a few himself. He knew the difference between acting and authenticity. What he had just witnessed was real. Megan Collins had chosen loyalty over survival. She had rejected $85,000 and a real home because she believed in something larger than herself. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to Amanda. She passed. proceed with the final phase. But first, I need you to do something else. That evening, the parking lot felt different to Megan as she settled Grace into their makeshift bedroom in the back seat of the Honda. The familiar space felt more confining than ever. The offer from Nexus Technologies burned in her mind like a fever dream. Through the foggy windows, she watched other employees leaving work, climbing into their cars and driving home to warm houses with real beds and working heaters. The contrast between their lives and hers had never felt more stark. Grace stirred in her sleep, her tiny fist clutching the edge of her worn blanket, the only item Megan had managed to keep from their old apartment before the eviction. "What am I doing, baby girl?" Megan whispered, gently stroking her daughter's cheek. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. The balance stared back at her like an accusation. $67.43. Her next paycheck would not arrive for another week. Half of it was already earmarked for Grace's diapers and formula. The car's gas tank was nearly empty. Winter was coming, and they could not keep sleeping in the parking lot much longer. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a low rumble of thunder. Grace whimpered in her sleep, and Megan instinctively pulled her closer. She thought about the job offer. $85,000. A real apartment. Health insurance that would cover Grace's upcoming vaccinations. Then she thought about what it would cost. Betraying the people who had trusted her. Sharing proprietary information with a competitor. Becoming the kind of person who put price tags on loyalty. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Integrity is the only thing no one can take from you, Megan. Everything else can be lost, but your honor is yours to keep or throw away." Mom had died with nothing in her bank account, but everything in her heart. She had taught Megan that some things were worth more than money. Opening her laptop, Megan connected to the building's Wi-Fi that still reached the parking lot. She composed an email to the address Amanda had provided. "Dear Ms. Sterling, thank you for the generous offer from Nexus Technologies. After careful consideration, I must respectfully decline. Anderson Technologies gave me an opportunity when no one else would. I cannot repay that trust with betrayal, regardless of the personal cost. I wish you success in finding another candidate. Sincerely, Megan Collins." She clicked send before she could change her mind. Another flash of lightning illuminated the parking lot. In that brief, brilliant moment, Megan caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. Despite everything, despite the uncertainty and the hardship and the temptation she had just refused, she was smiling. A grace stirred again, and Megan began their nightly ritual of stories. "Once upon a time," she whispered, "there was a princess who did not live in a castle. But she had something better than gold or jewels. She had integrity. She did not know that across the parking lot, in a rented Honda Civic identical to her own, Keanu Reeves sat watching. She did not know that her email had already been forwarded to him. She did not know that tears were rolling down his face as he read her words. And she certainly did not know that by this time tomorrow, her entire life would change. But first, there was one more test she would have to endure. And this one, she would face without any warning at all. The next morning started like any other for Megan. She woke before dawn, changed Grace's diaper in the cramped space of the back seat, heated a bottle using the portable warmer that had become her most essential possession. She delivered her daughter to Mrs. Dorothy Bennett at the daycare center, kissed her forehead goodbye, and walked toward the main building to begin another day. But today was not like any other day. As she approached her desk, she noticed something wrong. A crowd had gathered near the supervisor's station. Rachel Morrison stood at the center, her face twisted with triumphant satisfaction. "There she is," Rachel announced loudly. "The thief." Megan froze. "What are you talking about?" Rachel held up a plastic bag containing what appeared to be a company laptop. "This was found in your car this morning. Security conducted a random vehicle inspection, and look what they discovered. That is not mine. Megan's voice trembled. I have never seen that laptop before. Save it for HR. Rachel's smile was cruel. You are finished here, Collins. I always knew you were too good to be true. Two security guards approached Megan, their expressions apologetic but firm. Mom, you need to come with us. Megan looked around desperately. Her coworkers avoided her eyes. Tommy Richardson, who always saved her coffee, stared at his shoes. No one was willing to stand up for her. No one except the quiet new hire in the thick, framed glasses. Wait! Keanu stepped forward, his voice carrying an authority that seemed strange coming from someone who was supposedly just a temp worker. This does not make sense. Rachel turned on him with a sneer. Mind your own business, old man. This does not concern you. Actually, it does. Keanu removed his glasses, his warm brown eyes meeting Rachel's with an intensity that made her take a step backward. Because I have been watching this department for 2 weeks now, and I have noticed some very interesting things. He pulled out his phone. For example, I noticed that you, Rachel Morrison, arrive late at least 3 times a week, but never receive any disciplinary action. I noticed that company supplies routinely disappear from your station, and I noticed that you have a particular habit of targeting certain employees for harassment. Rachel's face went pale. Who do you think you are? Keanu removed his baseball cap, letting his long dark brown hair fall past his shoulders. The room went absolutely silent. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God, is that? My name is Keanu Reeves," he said quietly. I own this company. Rachel Morrison looked like she might faint. And I have some questions about why my employee assistance program has been systematically denying help to people who desperately need it. I have questions about why a laptop that was reported stolen from the IT department 6 months ago suddenly appeared in an employee's car this morning. And I have questions about why Victoria Palmer's cousin has been allowed to terrorize the hardest working person in this entire building. He turned to the security guards. Escort Ms. Morrison to HR. She is suspended pending investigation for harassment, theft, and planting evidence. You cannot do this, Rachel shrieked. Victoria will hear about this. She will... Victoria Palmer is currently being escorted from the building by federal investigators. Keanu interrupted calmly. It seems the financial irregularities in her division attracted some attention from people with badges. He had made a call to Margaret the night before. Just one call. But it had set in motion an investigation that had been waiting to happen for years. The security guards led a screaming Rachel Morrison away. Keanu turned to Megan, who stood frozen in shock, tears streaming down her face. I believe we have some things to discuss, he said gently. Would you come with me? The private conference room on the 30th floor felt like a different world from the chaos Megan had just experienced. She sat in a leather chair that cost more than her monthly salary, staring at the man across from her who had been her coworker. Just minutes ago. You were there the whole time, she whispered. You saw everything. I saw a woman who arrived before dawn every day to take care of her daughter. I saw an employee who worked harder than anyone else while receiving nothing but criticism. I saw someone who believed in this company's values even when the company failed to live up to them. Keanu slid a folder across the table. I also saw 4 assistance applications that were denied or ignored. I saw a system designed to save money by letting people fall through the cracks. And I saw the woman responsible for building that system personally flag your file to ensure you never received help. Megan's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were copies of her applications, each one marked with Victoria Palmer's notes. Chronic applicant. Recommend denial. What cannot encourage dependency? She knew. Megan breathed. She knew I was living in my car, and she deliberately made sure I could not get help. Wes. Keanu's voice was heavy with anger and regret. And I did not know. I trusted the wrong people, and you paid the price for my failure. He stood up and walked to the window. Bobby Anderson built this company on a promise that every employee would be treated like family. When he died, he asked me to keep that promise. He turned to face her. I failed him. I failed you. I failed everyone who believed in what this company was supposed to stand for. It was not your fault, Megan said softly. You did not know. That is the problem. Keanu's eyes glistened. I should have known. A leader who does not know what is happening to their people is not a leader at all. He returned to the table and slid another folder toward her. Which is why I need your help. Megan opened the second folder. Inside was an employment contract with her name at the top. Director of Employee Experience and Welfare. The salary made her gasp. $115,000. Nearly 4 times what she currently made. Full executive benefits including housing assistance, stock options, a corner office on the same floor where she now sat. I do not understand, she whispered. The fake job offer from Nexus was a test. Keanu admitted. I needed to know if your loyalty was real, or if you would betray this company the moment something better came along. You tested me. I did. And you passed in a way I never expected. He leaned forward. You had every reason to take that offer. You were living in your car with an infant daughter. You had been denied help 4 times. The company had given you nothing but hardship. And still, you said no. He shook his head slowly. In 30 years, I have never seen integrity like that. Not in Hollywood. Not in business. Not anywhere. Megan stared at the contract, unable to process what was happening. This is not charity, Keanu continued. This is recognition, of talent, of dedication, of the kind of moral courage that cannot be taught or bought. He paused. Bobby would have done exactly the same thing if he were still here. What would you want me to do? Rebuild the assistance program from the ground up. Make sure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Create a system that actually helps people instead of finding excuses to deny them. He stood up and extended his hand. The question is, will you help me keep the promise I made to my friend? Megan looked at his hand, then at the contract, then at the photograph of Bobby Anderson on the wall. She thought about all the nights she had spent shivering in her car. All the meals she had skipped so Grace could eat. All the times she had smiled through exhaustion because giving up was not an option. She thought about what it would mean to have the power to ensure no one else had to suffer the same way. She stood up and shook his hand. Yes, she said. I will help you. Keanu smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. Good, because we have a lot of work to do. He handed her a set of keys. These are to your new apartment. Anderson Towers across the street from headquarters. 2 bedrooms. Fully furnished. The daycare there has already reserved a spot for Grace. Megan took the keys, staring at them as if they were made of gold. When? She managed. Now. Today. Your things from your car have already been moved. My car will be parked in the executive garage, though I suspect you will not need to sleep in it anymore. Megan burst into tears. She had spent so many months being strong, holding everything together through sheer force of will. Now, with safety finally within reach, all the walls she had built came crashing down. Keanu stepped forward and gently put his arms around her. It is okay, he said softly. You are safe now. Both of you. Why? She sobbed into his shoulder. Why would you do all this for me? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I made a promise to a dying friend. Because I lost someone I loved very much. And I know what it feels like to have nowhere to turn. And because you reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? That the measure of a company is not its profits or its stock price. It is how it treats the people who have no power to fight back. He released her and handed her a tissue. Now, ready to see your new office. The apartment at Anderson Towers felt like something from a dream Megan had stopped allowing herself to have. 2 bedrooms, real walls, real ceilings, a kitchen with a stove and a refrigerator and a pantry waiting to be filled. The nursery made her cry all over again. Soft mint, green walls, a state-of-the-art crib, a plush rocking chair in the corner, shelves filled with books and educational toys. Above the changing table hung a custom mobile featuring tiny silver stars and moons. A note was attached. For all the nights you counted stars through car windows. Now Grace can count them from her own room. It was not signed, but Megan knew who had written it. The movers Keanu had arranged worked efficiently, though there was not much to transfer from her car. Just 2 small suitcases of clothes, Grace's baby supplies, and a small box of photographs that represented her entire history. Mrs. Dorothy Bennett arrived that evening, carrying Grace in a casserole dish. "I always knew you were special," the older woman said, tears streaming down her face. "I just wished I could have done more to help." "You did help," Megan said, embracing her. "Every extra diaper, every extra smile, every moment you made Grace feel loved. You helped more than you will ever know." That night, after Grace was asleep in her new crib for the first time, Megan stood at her floor, tip-ceiling windows looking out at the city. The parking lot where they had lived was visible from here. The small corner behind the recycling dumpster, now empty, illuminated by a single security light. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the warmth of her climate-controlled apartment contrast with the cold outside. Tomorrow she would step into her new role, face new challenges, and begin building something meaningful. But tonight, she allowed herself to simply feel grateful. Not just for the material changes in their lives, but for having stood firm in her principles when tested. Her loyalty had not just been rewarded, it had been transformed into an opportunity to help others find their own path from darkness into light. 5 years later, Megan Collins stood at a podium in front of 400 Anderson Technologies employees at the annual company meeting. The numbers on the screen behind her told a story that brought proud smiles to every face in the room, including Keanu Reeves in the front row. In the past 5 years, Megan announced, her confidence matching her polished executive appearance. The Second Chance program has helped over 400 employees transition from crisis situations to stable careers. Our retention rate for program participants is 96%, and 72% have been promoted within 24 months of entering the program. The presentation continued with stories of lives transformed. A single father who had been living in a shelter now led the IT security team. A domestic violence survivor who had escaped with nothing but her children had become a regional sales director. A veteran struggling with PTSD now managed international client relations. What Megan did not mention in her presentation was how she personally met with each program participant, sharing her own story to give them hope. How she had turned the company's old East LA parking lot into a transitional housing facility complete with a childcare center and career development resources. How she had created a mentorship network that paired struggling employees with executives who could guide their professional growth. Victoria Palmer was serving 3 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. The investigation Keanu had triggered had revealed a network of financial crimes stretching back nearly a decade. Rachel Morrison had been convicted of evidence tampering and harassment. She had tried to blame Victoria for everything, but the security footage Keanu had collected during his undercover assignment told a different story. Justice had been served, but more importantly, the systems that had allowed such abuse to flourish had been completely rebuilt. After the presentation, Keanu approached Megan with a warm smile. "Remember when you used to hide your situation from everyone?" he asked quietly. Megan laughed, adjusting her vice president badge. "Sometimes I walk by my old parking spot just to remind myself how far we have come." "Mom!" a voice called from the doorway. 6-year-old Grace ran in, her school uniform slightly rumpled from a day of first-grade adventures. She had her mother's green eyes and a smile that could light up any room. Behind her walked David Mitchell, Megan's husband of 2 years, who had started as Anderson Technologies' legal counsel and fallen in love with both mother and daughter. "Ready for your big surprise?" Keanu asked Grace, who nodded enthusiastically. Together, they rode the elevator to the building's newly constructed top floor. The doors opened to reveal a space unlike anything Anderson Technologies had seen before. A combination of emergency housing units, a 24-hour childcare facility, and a comprehensive resource center. "Welcome to the Collins Center for Employee Empowerment," Keanu announced, unveiling the plaque by the entrance. Megan gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Beneath the main plaque was a smaller one with Bobby Anderson's photograph and a quote: "Every employee is someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's parent. Never forget that. This is not just about helping people in crisis," Keanu continued. "It is about changing how corporations view their responsibility to their employees. And it all started because one person chose integrity over instant gratification." The center would serve as a model for other companies, combining immediate assistance with long-term support. But its most innovative feature was the Pay It Forward program Megan had designed. Every person helped by the center would eventually become a mentor to someone else in need. That evening, as Megan tucked Grace into bed in their penthouse apartment, her daughter asked a familiar question. "Tell me the car story again, Mom." Megan smiled, settling into what had become their favorite bedtime ritual. Once upon a time, there was a mommy and her baby who had nothing but a car and a dream. They thought they were alone, but they were really just at the beginning of their journey. Grace knew the story by heart, but always insisted on hearing it. And then, the owner of the company turned out to be the nice man who worked next to you. "That is right," Megan laughed. But the real magic was not in his help. It was in learning that sometimes keeping your values is more important than taking the easy path. "And now we help other people find their magic too." "Yes, baby girl. Now we help other people find their magic too." After Grace fell asleep, Megan stood at her window, looking out at the city that had once seemed so cold and indifferent. On her desk lay a folder containing her nomination for CEO. Keanu was retiring next year, and he had made it abundantly clear who he wanted as his successor. Her phone buzzed with a text from the evening. "Shift supervisor at the Collins Center. New family just arrived. Mother and 2 kids. Could use a friendly face if you are free." Megan was already putting on her coat before she finished reading the message. As she headed for the elevator, she caught her reflection in the chrome doors. No longer the desperate young mother from 5 years ago, but still the same person at heart, someone who understood that true success was not just about rising to the top. It was about reaching back to help others climb up with you. As she walked into the center that bore her name, Megan smiled at the words engraved beneath the plaque. Because everyone deserves a second chance to prove their worth. The story of the Undercover owner and the loyal employee had become legend at Anderson Technologies. But for Megan, it was more than just a story. It was proof that sometimes the biggest tests in life come disguised as impossible choices. And the greatest rewards come not from what you gain, but from what you refuse to lose. Your integrity. This is the story of Keanu Reeves and Megan Collins. Not the movie star and the customer service representative. Not the billionaire and the woman living in her car. Just 2 human beings who found each other at the intersection of desperation and compassion. A man who had lost everything he loved and built an empire to honor the memory of what remained. A woman who was losing everything she had and fought every day to keep her daughter safe. Their paths crossed in a parking lot at dawn, in a moment of observation that would change both their lives forever. The world is full of companies that see employees as numbers. The world is full of policies that punish people for being poor. The world is full of executives who make decisions in boardrooms without ever understanding the lives those decisions affect. But every now and then, someone remembers what really matters. Every now and then, someone sees the invisible people. Every now and then, a man disguised as a new hire turns out to be exactly the angel that everyone needed. Keanu Reeves did not start his involvement with Anderson Technologies to make money. He invested because he saw potential in a dreamer named Bobby. He stayed because he made a promise to a dying friend. And he transformed because a young woman living in her car reminded him that promises mean nothing without action. Megan Collins once slept in a parking lot with her infant daughter because she had no other choice. Now she ensures that no one at Anderson Technologies ever faces that choice again. Grace Collins once counted stars through foggy car windows. Now she sleeps in a room with a mobile of silver moons above her crib. Victoria Palmer once believed that people were just numbers to be managed. Now she has 3 years in a federal prison to reconsider that philosophy. And somewhere, watching over a company he built from nothing, the spirit of Bobby Anderson smiles. Because his dream of a corporation that treats people like family has finally come true. Not through policies or procedures, but through the simple act of one person choosing to see another person's humanity. Through integrity that could not be bought. Through loyalty that could not be broken. Through love that could not be diminished by circumstance or suffering. Remember this story the next time you pass someone who seems invisible. The woman struggling at the checkout counter. The man sleeping in his car in the corner of a parking lot. The single parent working 3 jobs to keep their children fed. They might be the next Megan Collins. Someone with extraordinary potential trapped in impossible circumstances. Someone who just needs a single chance to prove their worth. Someone whose loyalty and integrity could transform not just their own life, but the lives of hundreds of others. All they need is for someone to see them. Could that someone be you? Thank you for following this story. Let us know in the comments below. If this story has moved you and you'd like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light, please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter we're preparing for you.